I didn't set out to betray anyone. That word betrayal. It tastes harsh when I say it. Cold. Sharp. But that night it wasn't about cruelty. It wasn't about love either. It was something messier. Softer. Something I needed more than I wanted to admit. It started with a silence between me and my husband that had stretched too long. Not an argument. Not even indifference. Just this quiet fog between us. Like we were moving through the same rooms but never really seeing each other. He was kind. He was decent. But I felt invisible. And when you feel invisible long enough, you start craving the warmth of being seen more than anything else. I met Ryan on a Thursday at a work event I didn't even want to go to. I was wearing a black blouse I didn't love and had barely touched my wine when he walked up beside me. He didn't hit on me. He didn't try to charm. He just asked if I wanted to step outside, said it was too loud in there. And maybe that's why I followed. Because I was tired of noise that didn't mean anything. And somehow his quiet felt like an invitation. We stood out on the terrace, under a string of golden lights that made everything feel a little softer than it really was. The air was cool, brushing against my skin like breath. And when I turned to him, just to say something forgettable, I saw that look. That look. Like he had noticed the exact moment my arms folded across my chest. Like he could read the ache I never spoke out loud. He didn't smile. He just held my gaze like he wasn't afraid of what he might find there. And I should have looked away. God, I should have. But in that moment, with the city humming below us and the world blurring at the edges, his eyes felt like the only clear thing. And suddenly I didn't care if it was wrong. I just needed to feel something. Something real. Something warm. Even if it only lasted a night. I told myself I was just being polite. That stepping out onto that terrace was innocent. That the way my chest fluttered when Ryan brushed my arm, that was just the wind. But lies, especially the soft ones, have a way of sinking in before you notice you're drowning in them. We didn't talk about anything profound. Not at first. Work. Travel. The overpriced wine. But even his voice had this calm weight to it. Like he wasn't rushing to fill silence, like he wasn't afraid to sit in it with me. And I hadn't realized how starved I was for that. For someone who didn't just wait for their turn to speak, but actually listened. At one point, he leaned against the railing, looking out over the city, and asked, "Are you happy?" Just like that. No preface. No warning. Like he wasn't afraid of the mess behind that question. I laughed soft, nervous. That's a loaded one. But he didn't flinch. Just looked at me still. So I said what I thought was true. Yeah, sure. And he tilted his head, studying me like he could see the gap between my words and my face. I hated how that made me feel. Exposed. But also seen. Seen in a way I hadn't felt in months. Maybe longer. He didn't touch me, not yet. But I could feel him, the closeness, the quiet charge. Like static before a storm. Like my body already knew what my mind wasn't ready to admit. I remember telling myself I'd leave soon. Go back inside. Text my husband. Re-enter my life. But I didn't. Instead I stayed. Let my shoulder brush his as I leaned beside him. Let the silence stretch just a little longer. Let that ache between us bloom. Unspoken, undeniable. It wasn't love. But God, it felt like oxygen. And I didn't even realize how breathless I'd been. Until that moment with him. We didn't kiss that night. We didn't even touch beyond the occasional brush of arms, or the way our elbows leaned just a little too close on the railing. But somehow that made it worse. Or better. I don't know. Because restraint has its own kind of intimacy. And his silence wasn't empty, it was charged. Like he was waiting to see if I'd take one step closer or bolt. I kept thinking, if he reaches for me, I'll step back. But he didn't. He just stood there steady, calm, like he was giving me all the room in the world. And yet somehow I couldn't breathe with him so close. We talked about nothing after that. Stupid things. Childhood stories. He told me about how his mom used to braid his sister's hair before school, and how he always tried to copy it on his stuffed animals. And I laughed, really laughed for the first time in weeks. It was that laugh that undid me, because I realized I missed myself. The version of me who wasn't just a wife or a calendar full of obligations. The version of me who felt alive. And Ryan, he didn't make me forget my husband. He didn't erase anything. He just reminded me that I still existed. That I still had fire under all the quiet. When we finally went back inside, I told myself it was over. A moment. Nothing more. But as I walked past him, so close the heat of his body grazed mine, he didn't say a word. He just looked at me like he knew. Like he could already feel the gravity pulling me back. And I hated how much I wanted to fall into it. Because it wasn't love. Not even lust, not yet. It was something lonelier than both. A need. Sharp. Honest. And mine. I saw him again a week later. On purpose. I told my husband I had another late meeting. The lie came out too easily. And maybe that's what scared me most. Not how wrong it was, but how natural it felt. Like my body was already living a second life my heart hadn't caught up to. Ryan chose a quiet bar tucked away in a side street. Dim lights, soft music, the kind of place where people don't talk loudly. Where shadows stretch long and secrets stay in corners. He stood when I walked in. Not out of habit, but out of intention. Everything he did felt deliberate, like he never moved unless it mattered. And when our eyes met, it felt like the first inhale after holding my breath for too long. We didn't touch. Not even a handshake. But the moment I sat across from him, the air shifted. He ordered bourbon. I ordered wine I didn't even taste. Because the only thing I could feel was his gaze. Watching me. Studying me. Not with hunger, but with this quiet, aching curiosity. He asked about my favorite books. About the kind of music I listened to when I couldn't sleep. About the last time I felt completely free. And I wanted to lie. I wanted to keep it surface level, light, safe. But something about the way he listened made it impossible. So I told him the truth. I told him I felt like a ghost in my own home. That sometimes I stand in the shower too long, not because I'm washing anything away, but because it's the only place I feel warm. That I don't remember the last time someone looked at me like they wanted to know who I really was underneath all the titles, the roles, the layers. He didn't flinch. Didn't apologize or try to fix it. He just reached for his drink and said, "You're not invisible, you know." His voice was low, steady, and somehow that one sentence cracked something open inside me. Because I wanted it to be true. So badly. The table between us suddenly felt too wide. My hands ached to reach forward. But I didn't. Not yet. Because sometimes the ache is more intoxicating than the touch. And that night, the space between us wasn't just distance. It was foreplay. We sat there until the bar thinned out and the music turned softer. Not that I heard a single note. Every sound was muffled by the sound of him just being there. Every clink of a glass, every shift of a chair. It all blurred behind the sharpness of his presence. He didn't touch me, but his eyes did. And it's strange how a gaze can feel like fingertips. How it can trace the curve of your neck without ever moving. How it can pull you apart without a single word. I said something, I don't even remember what. Something small, something that made him smile. And when he looked down, almost like he was trying not to feel too much, I felt it again. That pull. That impossible gravity between two people who shouldn't want each other, but do. I think I reached first. Not fully. Just my fingers grazing the edge of his sleeve, like they were testing permission. And he didn't move. He didn't even breathe, it felt like. He just looked up at me. And in that pause, the world held its breath with us. It wasn't dramatic. There was no cinematic music, no rush. Just a quiet moment stretched so thin with tension it could have snapped. But it didn't. Instead, his hand found mine, slow, warm, cautious. Not claiming. Not forcing. Just there. And that single point of contact lit something deep beneath my skin. Because when you've been untouched for long enough, even fingers resting still can feel like lightning. I think that's when I realized it. This wasn't about cheating. This wasn't about wanting someone else. It was about feeling wanted at all. It was about not apologizing for craving closeness, for needing to be seen, to be felt, to matter. When he whispered, "Do you want to leave?" I didn't answer right away. Because the part of me that still believed I was good. She hesitated. But the part that had been starving? She leaned in. And whispered, "Yes." His apartment was small, quiet, the kind of quiet that doesn't feel empty, just intentional. Warm light spilled across the floor from a single lamp. No music. No distractions. Just us. I stood by the window, arms folded, heart racing. Not because I was afraid, but because everything in me knew I was about to cross a line I couldn't uncross. He didn't rush me. Didn't reach for me like a scene from some cliché. He just moved to the kitchen, poured 2 glasses of water, and set one down beside me like I might need it more than anything else. That gentleness. God, that was the thing. Because when you've been touched without tenderness, or worse, ignored altogether, gentleness feels like seduction. He leaned against the far wall, sipping his drink, watching me. Not hungry, not eager, just patient. Like he knew I needed to choose this fully, not be pulled. And the strange part was I wasn't thinking about my husband. Not in the way you'd expect. Not in guilt or fear or betrayal. But in the quiet, aching awareness that this was the kind of moment I had stopped believing I'd ever feel again. The kind where your skin hums before anyone touches you. Where silence doesn't feel empty, it feels full. Full of breath and want and the possibility of being known. So I stepped toward him. Slow. One breath at a time. Like the ground might shift beneath me. And when I reached him, I didn't kiss him. Not right away. I just laid my palm flat against his chest. Felt the rhythm there, steady, waiting. He covered my hand with his, eyes never leaving mine. And in that gaze I didn't feel cheap. I didn't feel wicked. I felt human. Cracked open. Raw. Desperate to feel something true. When his forehead leaned into mine, everything else disappeared. No words. No promises. Just the electric hush before thunder. And then, no, I won't tell you every detail. Because this wasn't about the act. It was about the way my body remembered itself. About how my breath caught not from pleasure, but from recognition. Like every part of me had been waiting to be felt again. Really felt. It wasn't love, but it was real. And sometimes that's enough to shatter you. The thing about moments like that, they don't scream. They whisper. It wasn't wild or frenzied. It wasn't rushed or reckless, or anything like the stories people make up when they talk about affairs. It was quiet. Almost reverent. Like we both understood what this really was. Not love, not lust, but need. He touched me like he was memorizing, not claiming. As if every inch of me held a question he didn't want to answer, only feel. And I let go. Not of my marriage. Not of my morals. But of the part of me that had been holding everything together for too long. The part that smiled politely, said, "I'm fine," and folded laundry with hands that hadn't been held in months. I don't know how long we stayed like that. Entwined, breathing each other in. Our fingers resting where words couldn't go. There was no dramatic finish. No falling apart. Just this gentle unraveling. Like two strangers shedding their masks for a night. And meeting each other honestly. Not with stories but with skin. Afterward we didn't talk much. I lay there staring at the ceiling, feeling every nerve in my body still humming. Not from what we did, but from what it meant. He didn't ask me to stay. And I didn't ask him to hold me. But when he reached for my hand under the blanket, I didn't pull away. I closed my eyes. And for the first time in a long time I didn't feel alone. Not happy. Not fixed. Just present. And sometimes presence is the most intimate thing of all. I left before sunrise. No dramatic goodbye. No lingering kiss at the door. Just the soft creak of hardwood under my feet. And the still warmth of his sheets still clinging to my skin. The city was quiet, caught between night and morning. That hour where everything feels both possible and fragile. I walked to my car slowly, like moving too fast might shatter what was left of me. Not from regret. Not even guilt. But from the sheer weight of what I had allowed myself to feel. And I realized it wasn't love I'd betrayed. It was the version of myself I thought I had to be. The one who never needed. Who endured the silence, the absence, the slow erosion of passion. The one who told herself that comfort was enough. That routine was safety. That missing something deeper was just selfish. But now I knew what it meant to be touched by attention. To be seen in the soft, aching places I kept hidden even from myself. When I got home, the house was still dark. My husband was asleep, one arm flung across my side of the bed. I watched him for a long moment, waiting for something to crash inside me. Shame, fury, maybe even sorrow. But instead I just felt still. Because what I did that night wasn't about him. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't escape. It was a moment I needed. To remind myself that I was still alive inside this skin. That I hadn't disappeared completely. I crawled into bed beside him, careful not to wake him. And as the sun broke quietly through the curtains, I lay there between the warmth of what was familiar and the echo of something that would never be. I didn't love Ryan, and he didn't love me. But for one night, we held each other like we were the only proof that loneliness wasn't permanent. And maybe that's all it was ever meant to be. Flicker. A breath. A beautiful, necessary wrong. It wasn't love. It was just the moment I needed to remember I still existed.